This is May 15th, 2021, and we are at Sacramento Road and what will soon be the Del Rio Trail, where the Sacramento Southern Railroad, which is right over there, you're watching it, is going to be torn out to make way for a bike trail, and it's going to go south from here. And one of the things that's important to look at is right here, this little box. The reason that's important is because it's at least 25 feet from the center line of the railroad, which helps to establish the property line. Now, the property line might be 33 feet, which would be consistent with those devices over there, the crossing guards. It's at the very least 25 feet, and that's going to be pretty important as we go along here, because these fence lines might be encroaching on railroad property in some places, and now the city of Sacramento owns this, and they're going to be building a bike trail, tearing out these tracks, building a bike trail in here, building a walking path, and some folks have built some pretty significant backyards in here, and those backyards encroach on this property. One of the other things that's worth noting is that we already have homeless living in here. So there's homeless that have been camping in this area, and as this bike trail is developed and opened up, this is going to be homeless territory under current city policy. So one of those things to think about as we go along. I'm going to try to document some of this before everything gets torn out. Now, one of the things online about the Del Rio Trail is that the city and the state, since 2017, have talked about tearing out the entire excursion railroad, starting in Old Sacramento, coming down to Sutterville, and replacing that with a bike trail and other accoutrement. So that means that Sacramento's railroading history would essentially be gone. Be no more. It'd all be torn out, and this will all be permanent bike trails. Of course, there's a lawsuit going on where people are trying to stop that from happening. See how that goes. Sacramento doesn't have a really good record of taking care of its history, and just call me a pessimist. I expect it's all going to be torn out. Maybe not in the next few years, but as soon as they have the money for it, the railroad, at least part of the railroad museum, is going to go, and the railroad in Old Sacramento is going to go. Here's another one of the right-of-way boxes. And again, notice where it sits. It's at least 25 feet from the center line of the railroad track. So we can pretty much say that the center line is at least 25 feet, probably 33. So like if you look at this island here, that's looking to be a good 25 feet out. So the city at one point built that island, and it's 25 feet out from the center line of the railroad track. So it is not on railroad property or city property for the purposes of this bike trail. We're crossing Southland Park Drive. And interesting is someone put up a new sign there for contacting about problems with this crossing. Crossing's been out of use since the 1970s. Now the path is currently blocked off down that way, but can see people walking on it. Okay, we're going to go a little further. I'm going to stop this for a moment. I'm just a little bit south of Southland Park, and you can see that there's a barbed wire fence here that separates the railroad from the yards. So now this person over here, I think they're in pretty good legal shape. I don't think the barbed wire fence is going to be a problem. Just looking at that, the fence has probably been there, shoot, looks to be an early 70s, late 60s construction. So this landowner here, they've got a fence of their own inside. That might be the original property line. And then this garden is an encroachment on the property, and the garden might have to go. So we'll see how this works out. But it's possible that that property on the other side of the barbed wire fence was abandoned by the railroad. If there is a conflict on that, we'll see that end up in court. And then we can see big barbed wire fence there. That might be an original fence line. And that's looking to be like 50 feet out from the center line. So, and then 50 feet out from the center line seems to be pretty consistent over here too. And this is the back of Whole Foods Market. Sprouts, excuse me. Same thing to me. Okay, we come along here. There's a gate that we can apparently go through. I've seen people going through it. We'll do that. Give you a little hint of what we've got here. A little hasp that somebody put here, kindly enough. And it seems to be set up to walk through. So we're going to do that. Okay. Oh. And someone did a solar system map on the railroad, which is kind of clever. Now over here on the left, you can see another homeless camp. And that's inside the fenced area. Oh, and here's one of these little fence situations I'm talking about. These folks are definitely encroaching. They're encroaching on the railroad property. They're well within 25 feet of the center line. And that's what's probably going to have to go. So you can see that there's a railroad embankment here that obviously was railroad property if it's a railroad embankment. And these people have built their properties up onto the embankment. So they're probably going to have their stuff removed. And where it's already city property, the city doesn't need to go to court to remove that. They just need a bulldozer. So again, there's that homeless camp. These folks over here, their fence lines seem to be just fine. You can see the difference. They're at least 50 feet from the center line, and that is probably the real property line. These folks on this side should probably be 50 feet from the center line too, I'd be guessing. So they might be looking at half their backyards. Yeah, so you can see an old fence down in here. So there's an old fence. That's probably the actual property line on that old fence. So that won't be a problem. And then this new fence, yeah, someone's trying to grab what they can. All right, we're still walking along here. I can see why the city wants to put a trail here. This is how this is being used at this point. The Railroad Museum originally wanted to put or extend the Railroad Museum's track all the way down to at least Freeport. And that would have meant reusing the railroad that's already here. After this is gone, there will not be any railroad. And of course, you know, part of the plan is to get rid of the excursion railroad, which would remove any pressure to ever put tracks down here again. Kind of a shame to see it go, but at the same time, it's being used as a trail. So all along here on the western side of the railroad, looks to be the fence line has been extended at least 25 feet into the city property. And on the eastern side, the fence line seems to be in the right place. So all these folks along the western side, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with them. Oh, and right up here we get a good illustration of the encroachment. Because this is going to be the newsworthy issue up here. All right. So you see those folks put up a brand new fence with their nice home. And that fence line is set back a good 50 feet. And then right here, you can see up at the top, I don't know if you can make that out, but right up the top center screen, you can see the end of the original fence line. And then somebody extended the fence down into city property. And that looks like about 25 to 30 feet of encroachment. And all that's going to have to go. And that fence line continues all the way back to Southland Park Road for the most part. Except here. This landowner probably took the time to get a survey done before they put that nice, beautiful fence up. And it actually is a good looking fence. So good on them for not encroaching on someone else's property. And I'm going to stop this here and we'll resume in a minute. Just got done talking to the gentleman with the fence back there, and so it turns out what he's doing is he fenced that off because people were digging dirt out of his embankment for some reason. And even though it's not his property, he's trying to maintain the embankment to prevent any problems, because there's a county sewer line that needs to be protected. So he's actually doing good work. A little concerned about what's going on here, and then put me in touch with a community group that's interested in the subject of what's going to happen with this railroad and the Del Rio Trail. So we're going to follow up on that and see what happens, but we're still going to go do a little bit more walking and talking on the trail here, get a few more things documented. Okay, so now we are at Fruit Ridge and the Del Rio Trail, and just to give you a sense of place, that's Gilgan Way, and you can see this is a pretty busy street. So right here, Fruit Ridge rises up and goes over the embankment to the railroad, and question here is going to be, will the city dig a hole through this and have an overpass for the bike trail, or are they going to have a grade crossing, which is going to be pretty dangerous for anybody trying to use this bike trail and running path? Because right now you can see I'm on about a 2-foot wide sidewalk. It's barely improved. This is going to be access to the trail, so this will have to be brought up to standard for wheelchair access and whatnot. We'll see if they do that. And there's trucks going through. This is one of the things that has to be improved here. Okay, and now we are at the railroad, or the Del Rio Trail, however we're going to call it. And so this is looking back north where we were. That's looking towards Southland Park. And you can see, get an idea that the embankment for the railroad probably has a footprint about 50 feet wide, 50 to 60 feet wide, and it crosses Fruit Ridge. This is where I would probably say they're going to need either an underpass or something to do this right, because that's a very dangerous road to be crossing. And here's city utility facility, no trespassing. Okay, and there's a tree growing in the tracks, which gives you an idea of how long this has been here. There's a switch that used to go into the city utility yard. So they used to get train traffic into the utility yard. Don't know why. It was a long time ago. The last train either ran in 68 or 71. Get different information on that. Different people say different things. I'm gonna say 71. So 1971 was probably the last train here. Alrighty. So we can see further down the trail. Here's the city utility fence that's obviously encroached on the railroad, because we're looking at maybe 15 feet from the center line, and 25 feet from the center line is the railroad property at a minimum. But then over here, with a fence line at the church that's at Fruit Ridge and Gilgun, and that's got to be a good 60, 70 feet set back from the center line of the railroad. So I think the city's own property is encroaching into railroad space quite a bit. So they've got this driveway that's on the railroad embankment, and I don't think any of this was originally city property. Now, of course, the city says that they own this railroad path now, so maybe this isn't a big deal, for them legally. But as far as the development of the parkway goes, it's going to be an issue. So we'll see what they're going to do to resolve the conflict of use here for the city. Because there's room for a bike trail and a running trail, but it's not going to be the really wide bike trail that they originally were talking about in some of the plans, unless this fence gets set back quite a bit. It's going to have to come back quite a bit to make room for this grand parkway we've been hearing about. All right, so we're stopping there, and then we're going to move on. So now we're at 35th Street and the trail. And as we look at the encroachment on the railroad right-of-way, you can see that the most egregious offender along here is the city of Sacramento itself. So if the railroad were to come back through here, the city would have to move back probably a good 30 feet. And don't think they want to do that. So as we look south, looks like there's part of a parkway that's already there. 35th is a reasonably busy street. And you can see down yonder there that the trail, or the railroad itself, is overgrown. And there's an improved path just to the east of the railroad. And again, very busy street. So this is going to be an interesting crossing for pedestrians and bicycles as this becomes a popular park. So there will have to be some thought to pedestrian and bicyclist safety crossing here. So we're driving along here. This is just south of 35th, and very nice park. You can see this street here. And this is interesting because these homes that we're going to come along here, their yards are all within 15 to 20 feet of the center line of the railroad. And even though these were built with a permit, they're still, I don't know, man. I'm not a property attorney, I'm going to say that right off the bat, but I think these folks are going to have some problems as the city's development comes through, wanting to make that new path. These folks could be losing some backyards, or at least a chunk of their backyards. Just seems reasonable to me that most of this right-of-way is around, I'd say a good 100 feet wide, based on what I've seen. And these folks are definitely well intruded into that right-of-way. What's interesting is over here on the left, there's this whole place where that bike trail could go. And it wouldn't pose a problem at all. Yep. So here's the railroad down here. We're going to go take a look at that. Oh yeah, we're definitely encroaching into the railroad space here. So now we're at 43rd Street looking north, or 43rd Avenue rather, looking north at the trail. And the trail here looks like it's being encroached on both sides significantly. And again, I'm not a property attorney. I don't know what the land lines are. But where the right-of-way was clearly about 100 feet wide north of here, kind of odd to see it here about maybe 50 feet wide, if even that. And then we're going to turn around and look south. And here's the railroad itself, crossing 43rd. And we're going to cross the street. Okay. And generally, there's an indication of a right-of-way here. And this would actually be it. So this bit of sidewalk was replaced probably because there used to be crossing guards here. So this may well be the correct fence line right here that we're looking at for this particular stretch. I don't know. It could be encroaching. I think it's probably encroaching. And then we see the trail going further south here. And these homes are, their yards are right up against this. And as you look, I'm standing on the line here. You can see those properties on the left. Their fence lines and even a couple of homes seem to be crossing the line right into the railroad property. That might be an issue for the city coming along. We don't know. See what the official surveys have to say. Again, I'm not making official statements here, just judging what I'm seeing. Okay, and we are at the south end of Park Village Drive and Charlie Jensen Park. And we're gonna take a look at some of this pathway here. You can see the fence line, which pretty aggressively moves into the right-of-way for the railroad. And again, I don't know. Maybe that fence line's legit. Maybe it's not. If it's not, we're going to see some drama with that in the next coming months as all of this is cleared out. Another issue that's going to be in here is there's some heritage oaks that are definitely huge trees. I imagine they'll be unaffected because the city likes its oak trees. So hopefully not a problem. And then we're looking south and you can see the improved bike trail that's already in place going through here. And the bike trail is to, I don't know, it's about 40 feet removed from the railroad, which is hidden under these brambles. So there is a railroad here, but it's all under these brambles. And then it looks like we have some pretty serious encroachment over here as well, which will be entertaining. Yeah, so here's our railroad, and Remember, so far we're talking about 25 to 50 feet from the center line is where the fence should be. And here we have a fence. It's like 2 feet away from the track. And then this back fence, yeah, that's just maybe 20 feet from the center line. And the homes are set back quite a ways. So it looks like we probably have some encroachment happening here. But definitely encroachment here. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out, looking at that fence line being right adjacent to the track. So this will be entertaining to see what's going to happen here. Okay, and now we are at Florin Road, where the railroad tracks end. This is the intersection where the trail is going to have to cross. You can see across the way there. This will either be a grade crossing, or if they're smart, they're going to put up a bridge here, because this is really busy and I can't see a traffic light right next to a traffic light. And then who's going to want to cross right at Florin and Freeport? That is crazy busy. So south of here doesn't seem to be much encroachment occurring, so I don't think there will be a problem, because there's a gully between the railroad and the homes, and the gully separates the homes. This is a very busy area. It's going to be really dangerous for people crossing. All right, now we are at the south end of the trail. We're south of Freeport and Meadowview, and here's the East Bay Mud intake plant. And up here, there's a sign that says the tracks are out of service.